in over a month, and I'm really sorry about that. I was in a huge reading slump, and then I finally got pulled out of it, and I was just excited to be reading again that I wasn't really thinking about videos. But I'm back now, and it's August, and I never did a June wrap-up, so I'm doing a June and July combined wrap-up. I'm going to go in order of when I finished these books, except for the first one I'm going to talk about, because I didn't finish it, and I'll talk about that in a second. Well, not the first, the second one I talk about. So first I'm going to say I finished up the Room audiobook at the beginning of June, and I'm not going to say much about that because I think I talked about that in my May wrap-up because I listened to most of it in May. I did really enjoy it. I gave it 4 stars, and check out my May wrap-up if you want to know more about that. Next, you will notice that the first several books I finished this month were audiobooks. And that is because in June, I guess May to June, I made my third attempt to read this. Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. Now, I've said this before, I loved Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. I adored that trilogy. So I really wanted to like this. I did. There were things I found interesting, and I was like kind of holding on to certain plot lines, but I was just struggling to read this. I have now spent a full month between the 2 times I really tried to read this, 2 weeks earlier and then 2.5 weeks in June trying to read this book and not reading anything else. I got over 200 pages in, and it takes me a week, if even, to read a book this size when I'm really enjoying it. I spent over a month trying to read this, and I just couldn't do it. I'm sorry, Laini Taylor. I love you. I just couldn't do this book. Maybe I'll try again at some point, but for now, this is a did not finish. I can't try anymore. I'm sorry. This is why I didn't read anything else in June. Well, I read one other thing in June. One. In a whole month. I did a bunch of audiobooks. I finished 1 physical book in the month of June because of this. Next, I have some more audiobooks that I finished while I was attempting to force myself through Strange the Dreamer. I finished Don't Look Back by Jennifer Armentrout. Apparently I didn't rate it. I don't know why I didn't rate it. I know I really liked that book. I think I was between 4 and 5 stars, and I didn't know which way to go, so maybe that's why I didn't rate it. But I really liked that book. It was about a girl who lost her memory, and some things just don't seem right with what people are telling her. Her feelings don't match what her feelings apparently used to be, and there's some weird things happening. At the same time that she lost her memory, her best friend disappeared and ended up dying. And nobody knows how she died, what happened to her. So she's kind of trying to figure out what happened to her best friend, who it turns out was kind of a frenemy situation, and at the same time figure out why things don't seem right. And I loved it. I really did. I love Jennifer Armentrout, and I'm so sorry that I waited so long to begin reading her books, because they are amazing. Next, I read The Truth About Forever by Sarah Dessen. I'm still on a Sarah Dessen kick. I've listened to so many audiobooks. I gave this one 4 stars. This one I said had a slower start than a lot of her other books, but by the end, it was fantastical. And yes, I just said fantastical. In this one, it follows a girl named Macy who is starting off a summer without her boyfriend while he's away. And things start off a little rocky. She's taking over his job at the library, but the girls that work there don't seem to accept her. And then he ends up thinking that maybe their relationship is moving too quickly and going on a break might be best. Meanwhile, she gets the second job at a catering company where she's learning for the first time that the organized life that she has lived all this time might actually be keeping her from some fun. So she's in this catering job, it's chaos, there's a guy there that is awesome, and she learns to kind of let go and find out who she can be away from the boyfriend that she's been just because she felt like she should be with for the past like 3 years. I really did like this one. I do remember it was a little bit slower than some of the others. By the end, it ended up being one of my favorites. Next, I finally put down Strange the Dreamer and picked up What Light by Jay Asher. It's about a girl whose parents run a Christmas tree farm. So she's grown up selling Christmas trees her whole life, and every year, right around Christmas time, her family picks up and moves to California to sell Christmas trees there because there aren't a lot of Christmas trees growing there. So she kind of has two lives. She has her home life, and then she has her California life. She's a best friend there who she kind of considers one of her best friends even though she only sees her once a month. She's never let herself get too attached to someone emotionally. This might be the last summer going to California because the business isn't doing too great, and it would actually be better for them to just keep their farm and ship trees rather than go and sell them themselves. But things happen in this possibly last year there, and she discovers that in the one time when her life might be down to the one, maybe that's when she will actually miss this most. And I gave this one 4 stars too. Definitely read it, and it's a really good read around Christmas time. I read it in the summer, which is the opposite, but I'd recommend reading this around Christmas time. It was a lot of fun. Next up was another Sarah Dessen audiobook, The Moon and More. This one was not my favorite. It was about a girl who worked for like a leasing company that rented out summer beach houses, and it was different than most of Sarah Dessen's books. Let's just say that. The girl started out with a boyfriend who things didn't quite work out with, and then she met this other guy who seemed great, but then anything I say is a spoiler, but let's just say it did not take the path that Sarah Dessen books normally take, which is fine, but because of the path it did take, I wasn't feeling it as much as most Sarah Dessen books. It just wasn't one of my favorites. It also has one of the lowest ratings of her books on Goodreads, probably because other people feel similarly to me about this one. I did still give it 4 stars. I enjoyed it. This one was like on the lower end of 4 stars, whereas a lot of Sarah Dessen's books are on the higher end of 4 stars. I give a lot of books 4 stars, guys. It doesn't mean much. It just means that I enjoyed it, but it wasn't perfect. That's what 4 stars means to me. I need to change that. Next was another audiobook. Another Sarah Dessen, Keeping the Moon. This one I didn't rate. I think I was just kind of getting a little tired of all the Sarah Dessen books. Although I didn't stop. I probably should have, but I didn't. This one's about a girl named Coley who is sent to live with her aunt, and her mom has like become super famous for losing weight and selling how she lost all the weight. Coley has been made fun of her whole life, but now she meets these 2 girls that work at a cafe, and she ends up working with them, and they become really good friends, and she kind of gets sucked into their world, and there's also a boy, obviously. I feel like this one also had a bit of a slower start, but I did really enjoy this one. I was actually more interested in the friendship in this one than the romance. And I liked that. It was different, but this one was a good kind of different. There was less focus on the romance aspect of it and more on friendship and figuring out who you are. And I really liked that. Next, I read Flame in the Mist by Renee Ahdieh, which was kind of a long time coming for me to read. I love Renee Ahdieh. I enjoyed this book. It took me a little while to get into, and I think that was part of my reading slump that I was kind of going through. But it's kind of a Mulan story about a girl who is supposed to marry a prince, and she ends up being attacked on her way to her betrothed. And in order to survive, she pretends to be a male to join this group of who she thinks are killers that she believes were sent to kill her. And everybody she was with died, by the way. She was the only survivor, and they didn't even know she survived. But in infiltrating their camp, obviously it turns out everything's a little bit more complicated than it seems, and who knows who the real good guys are and who the real bad guys are. and I really did enjoy this. It was slow to start, but it got there true to Renee Ahdieh form, and I really did enjoy it. I ended up giving it 3 stars, mostly because it did take a while, like a really long time for me to get there, but it's worth it. Part of my problem is I'm not into like historical fiction or like settings in far places, but if you enjoy those things, definitely read it. I don't think I'm the like ideal reader for that book, but I did enjoy it still, and I'm gonna read the sequel. But if you're more of the ideal reader for that, definitely check it out. Do it. It was good. There were samurais. The reason I gave it 3 stars, it took me 3 full weeks to read. I started it with a week left in June, finished it 2 weeks into July. 3 full weeks, which is why I had 2 audiobooks in a row again. Reading Slump, people. Reading Slump. Next was another Sarah Dessen book. This Lullaby. I gave it 4 stars. This one follows a girl named Remy who is pessimistic about love because her mother is currently working on her 5th marriage. And it's kind of hard to believe in love when you've seen your mother have failed marriage after failed marriage. Meanwhile, her brother has fallen in love and doesn't seem to be the same person that she grew up with. She just kind of like goes around from guy to guy. Then she meets Dexter, who immediately feels a connection, and she's like, this guy is a little bit too much. What is happening here? But slowly she decides to give him a chance and needs to figure out if it's worth actually sticking with giving him the chance, or if she should just shut him out the way she has every guy before she developed real feelings for him in the past. This one was one of my favorite Sarah Dessen books. I loved it. Loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it. And I think it's kind of part of what pulled me out of a reading slump, even though it was an audiobook, not a physical book, but it was one where I could just sit there listening to it and enjoy it, and I was loving it. So I guess it was a good thing I stuck with Sarah Dessen books, even though I had been kind of getting tired of them, because I found one of my favorites. 3 physical reading books in a row next, guys. I got out of my reading slump. First was Windfall by Jennifer E. Smith. This is one that I wish I had done a book talk on because it's like fairly new, but I just was so excited to like actually read a book and finish it in 4 days that I didn't want to stop reading after I finished this. This one is about a girl who has been in love with her best friend forever. On his 18th birthday, as a rite of passage, she buys him a lottery ticket thinking, funny gift, whatever, it's a rite of passage. And then he wins. He wins, I believe it was $141 million, and he's been struggling with money ever since his father left, who had a gambling issue and left all of the debts to the wife and son. All of a sudden, he's wealthy, and it starts to drive a wedge between them because they've kind of always connected on their struggles, and all of a sudden, he is becoming this different person and making choices that she doesn't necessarily agree with. And they need to see if they can work through that and continue to be friends, if not more than friends. I adored this book. I loved it. I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. It was just well thought out, good storyline. It was a lot of fun. And it was also just fun to think like, what would I do if I won millions of dollars in the lottery? But I never enter, so that's not going to happen. Next up, this is one I'm really excited to talk about, Warcross by Marie Lu. I actually just recorded a book talk for this, though you won't see it until September when the book comes out. This is one of the books that I picked up at BookCon this year, and I was so excited to get my hands on this. I love Marie Lu, and I gave it 5 stars, which is great because I kind of struggled with Marie Lu's last series, but this one was so good. I loved it. It's about Emika. It takes place in like the near distant future when gaming is more immersive and you just like go into the game to play. And Emika is a bounty hunter who gets people that are breaking the law that police just don't have time for. One day she hacks into the opening ceremonies for like the international championship of Warcross, this game, and ends up finding herself in the championship competition as a secret bounty hunter looking for somebody set to destroy the game. And I love this book. 5 stars. It was so much fun. It reminded me what I love about Marie Lu, and I am so excited for everybody to read this book. Next, I do not have a physical copy of the next book I read, and I ended up getting an ebook for it because they didn't have it at Barnes & Noble when I went to get it. But that is Lucky in Love by Casey West. I have a review of like all Casey West books except for one that I did before. I love Casey West stories. This one is actually another book about somebody winning the lottery. Weird. This one's about a girl whose family is struggling for money, and she wins the lottery. She wins, I think it was $50 million, but after taxes it's like $33 million, and all of a sudden everybody wants to be her friend when they didn't before, and she doesn't know who to trust, and even her good friends are like acting a little weird and distant, and things kind of spiral out of control. But at her job at the zoo, there's this one guy who doesn't seem to know that she won the lottery and is treating her the same, and she kind of wants to spend all of her time working with him now because he's the only person that's genuinely caring about her and doesn't seem to care that she's now a millionaire, doesn't seem to even know that she's now a millionaire. And it's just adorable. I love Casey West stories because they're just so cute and wonderful, and you can always expect a happy ending, and they're just so much fun, and this one was no different. And I really liked the idea of trust in this one, and how do you know if somebody's being genuine, and what money can do to a person. It's interesting, you see a bunch of people have very different responses to money, and a bunch of people explaining what they would do with the money. And it's interesting to see how different people perceive it and what they would do with it. I really did enjoy it. 4 stars. And that's it for books I finished in June and July. I have one more audiobook that I started. It was another Sarah Dessen called Just Listen. And I did like it. I will talk more about that in my August wrap-up because I did finish it. It's finished now, but I finished it in August, so I'll talk about it there. And that is it for books that I read, or at least started, or read a little bit of, in June and July. I also have a whole bunch of books that I got my hands on in June and July. First are all of the books that I got at BookCon, which my original plan was to go through that in my June wrap-up because I got them in June, but I didn't do a June wrap-up. And I don't want to go through all of them because that would take a really long time because there were a lot of books. So I'm just going to link below to my BookCon video where I do go through all of those books, and I had wanted to go through the ones that I didn't get a chance to really talk about in that video in my June wrap-up, but this is going to be too long. So I guess when I read those, I'll talk about them more. Here's a picture of me holding all of the books that I got at BookCon in June, and there's a link below to the video where I talk about them. The other book that I picked up in July that I have not had a chance to read yet, I got it at the very end of July from my friend Flo, who is amazing, and sent it to me because I did not get a chance to get it at BookCon. Wonder Woman! In fact, in my video, I think I was talking about my disappointment in not getting this at BookCon. But now I have it, and it's so pretty. And in it, she wrote me in a little note, which is amazing. And she sent me this. It's a bookmark for Iron Gold by Pierce Brown, and it's signed, and I love him, and I'm gonna marry him someday. And I didn't just say that on camera. Anyway, that is it for my June and July wrap-up. I'm hoping to make some more videos in August. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Please subscribe by clicking right here. And I will talk to you next time. Goodbye! Hey, Ellie and Dobby here. Like the video? Come subscribe. Do it right now. Click it.